Well, Alma, you good to go then?
All right, cool.
Brilliant. Well, welcome everyone to Law Hackers. Today we're talking to Alma Asay, or Asay, from Allegory. Thanks for joining us, Alma.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. Hi, everybody.
Well, just for the audience, for those of you that don't know about Allegory, can you give us your elevator pitch? What does it do?
Sure. So it's built based on my experience as a litigator at Gibson Dunn, a big law firm. And it is basically a smartphone for litigation. So if you think about your smartphone, you put in a phone number one time, and it becomes available through 20 different applications. You don't put it in 20 different times. Well, in law, we're constantly taking the same document and uploading it to 20 different folders, 20 different times, every time we use it, calling it Exhibit X, Exhibit 10, Exhibit A, but it's the same document. So in a nutshell, what Allegory does is it takes all of the information that litigators are using, takes it in once, and then throughout the rest of the case, you cross-reference back to it throughout the case so that anytime you pull up a document, you can see where it's been used and everything anyone has said about it, and you have all that information at your fingertips.
Okay, great. And can you just talk us through your story, your background? How did this all start to creating this product?
Sure. So I was a litigator at Gibson Dunn. I loved my job. I loved the team that I worked with, working on large-scale, complicated litigations for terrific clients. And we put together systems and processes for managing all of the information in our cases that enabled us to have what we needed at our fingertips when we needed it. But the effort that had to go into that up front was, many hours, very manual, lots of paralegal and attorney time being invested in it. And we and the clients had to make a decision to put that effort and time into it. And we knew the benefits on the other side, but it just seemed like there had to be a better way, a way to automate that initial process so that you could still have everything at your fingertips, but less load on the front end, and also just in a way that was more user-friendly so that even a partner, could pick up something, rather than emailing an associate every time that they needed a filing. They had a program where it was super easy for them to pull up on their iPad, oh, there's the complaint. It's always in the same place on every one of my cases. I know where it is, and it's a program that even I can use. So at some point, I had worked at Gibson Dunn and was starting to think about next steps and partnership and thought, well, maybe it's time to go try something different. And I had quite a few ideas. I originally was going to leave and go do some overseas volunteer work, had some different ideas, but ultimately started talking with some developers and talking them through my ideas, and we all got very excited about it and started working on it. And as I started to see it come to life, it seemed like, well, let's give this a shot.
When was this? Was this around 2011, 2012, or a bit further back?
Yeah, so the initial meeting with the developers was in August of 2011, and I left Gibson Dunn in February of 2012.
And what sort of systems were you using before your platform? Was this all just done on Word documents or spreadsheets and thumb drives? I mean, what's the sort of, what is your tool really replacing here?
You got it, Excel and shared drives.
Yeah.
And when I talk to people outside the industry, and VCs, investors, people who haven't been inside a law firm, I tell them Excel and shared drives, and they look at me and say, "Well, you must just not know," because it's just so baffling that that's really the technology that's available to lawyers that they can understand. Most of the technology that's been built for lawyers is built by developers and does a lot of very fancy things, but I'm not particularly tech-minded. Most of my lawyer friends aren't, and we don't know how to use those programs. And so the default, which I've heard again and again, is I'd rather use Excel. So it is Excel and shared drives is the prevailing technology, I guess.
Yeah, so you started to talk with developers and I guess put some ideas into code. Can you talk us through that whole building out the app through a beta and getting testers and that sort of thing?
Sure. So we started with an initial development team and we started to build out the app. And I loved the way that it was coming together on the front end. They had a background in kind of social media apps, very user-friendly, which obviously was tremendously important to us. But it was very buggy. And at the time, I knew nothing about technology. I mean, absolutely nothing. Not that I'm that much further ahead now, but I can communicate with my team now. And I just knew that things kept breaking. You know, we would make a change and 10 other things would break, and I didn't understand why.
Yeah.
And ultimately, they wanted to push it out, and I said, I can't push this out. And they said, well, Apple puts out Maps, and Maps doesn't work, and everyone loves Apple anyway. And I was like, I don't know what's wrong with it. I don't know how to fix it. But with that attitude, there's no way I can go sell this to law firms.
Yeah.
So ultimately, we found a new team, had a background in healthcare, enterprise, you know, very much had those set of skills that we needed to go build an app that was secure and stable. They taught me about testing so that when you push a change, nothing breaks because you've already done all the automated tests. You know, when they explained to me I didn't have to QA for 3 hours every time, my jaw dropped. We brought in an outside security consultant. We built all sorts of security measures, and they really became, you know, my right hand, and we wouldn't have an app today if it weren't for them coming in and building it in such a way that they understood our audience. They understood that things couldn't break at 4 a.m. on a Sunday. It needed to always work.
Yeah.
So that's how we ended up with the app that we have.
I mean, how do you go from being a lawyer, and there'll be a few lawyers out there, I think, or ex-lawyers are in startup land, coming from that real precision industry where you're used to getting everything absolutely perfect, but in startup world there certainly is the sort of, you know, you need to be embarrassed by your product, just get it out there, get it into people's hands. And for us as lawyers, that must be a really, really hard thing to let go of that fine-grained control in order to get a product out. I mean, it sounds like you stood your ground and went for quality, but was that quite a challenging time?
Yeah. Well, that was an extremely challenging time. You know, we were at a standstill with them and didn't know how to find new developers. We got very lucky. But more generally, I think what you just said just hits it on the mark. It's very, very hard to come from an industry where you're not supposed to make mistakes. And everybody around you understands that, and they put up with you when you say it needs to be perfect. And then you go into the startup world, and you know, more generally, I would say even just the business world, and people are much more, you know, get it done, get it out there, get people on it. You know, it doesn't matter, just get it in 1,000 hands, and then if it breaks, you know, you'll iterate and you'll put it in 1,000 more hands. Well, you know, it doesn't quite work that way, and I've found both. You know, in development, I had to find a team that understood the audience we were building for, and that when I said things like it has to be perfect, they agreed with me.
Yeah.
And they knew that it actually did have to be perfect. And that was very hard to find. But more generally, just building a startup, you know, I think I'm the only one who sends emails to some of our contractors and, you know, people and says things like, this isn't okay when you double bill me. You know, I think there's a lot of loosey-goosiness that happens, and people are just like, oh, it's okay if a mistake is made because we'll just fix it later. And I'm so used to, no, you just do it right the first time. It has been a big, big adjustment.
Yeah. And I guess taking it to launch, I mean, did you have an official launch day? When did you launch the app as it currently stands now?
I don't know if there's an official launch date. You know, we were bringing on some pilot clients, and then we would, you know, we had some great experiences because some of our pilot clients had terrible, terrible data. So, you know, we had unexpected data here, unexpected data there, and it allowed us to then revise the app and make it more robust. You know, when I say I'm working with a team that, you know, takes perfection very seriously, the attitude in development is you want perfect data. Like, that's perfect to them. You want perfect data. And so then I had to explain to them, yeah, I know that perfection is important, but by the way, we should expect terrible, imperfect data from our clients and even from the vendors they're working with, and we should take in whatever we possibly can. So that was a big transition to adjust our app to be able to take bad data and at least present everything we could get out of it. So there were a lot of steps like that along the way with our pilot clients. And then we started to get to the point with our clients where, you know, everything would run smoothly and we had them up and running and things were going the way that they were supposed to. And so then you can say, oh yeah, we're very much live, but there wasn't, you know, especially when you're dealing with firms and having to get them to sign contracts and then get a case on board, and you never quite know if they're actually going to sign or not. You know, it's hard to say, hey, we're launched.
Yeah, I mean, where are you at the moment in terms of users? I mean, I imagine you've got paid clients, you bootstrapped or funded, hiring. Give us a sense of where you're at.
Sure. We raised some seed money, both as equity and convertible debt, and we raised about $750,000 that way. And then I've obviously put in a lot of money into the company, and now we're starting to get revenue in. We are talking with legal services partners about various relationships. We've already entered into one partnership where they're providing support to help us deliver Allegory, because one of the things I realized along the way is you can't, I was focusing a lot of my time when I was out in Silicon Valley on trying to raise a bunch of money. Well, the legal industry is a very, very scary thing for these investors. So I'd go out there, I tried to raise a lot of money to go hire a bunch of people to support delivery of Allegory. And I realized, why am I wasting my time doing all of this when I could be out finding clients and partner with legal services companies that have people and are excited to have different ways to get into law firms and appear innovative and want to partner with me. And now I can focus on doing something that's good for both of us, rather than spinning my wheels trying to raise money. So the approach that we've ended up taking has been to kind of raise a small amount of, small but significant, but small in the world of what we've done, bootstrap the rest, and then partner with companies that can help us support delivery of Allegory so that we can continue focusing on moving the ball forward.
Yeah, and in terms of your price model, I see you've got a tiered structure there. I mean, what's the real target market for you guys? Is it the big end of town firms, or is it small to medium as well?
It's small, medium, large firms. Also, law schools, in-house counsel, nonprofits, government. But one of the things I saw in legal technology is people were either building for small firms or building for big firms. And the way I looked at it was, I'm a litigator. And if I'm at a small firm, I might be doing big cases. When I'm at a big firm, sometimes I have very small cases, and I'm not even hiring any discovery vendor. I have nothing to manage them, and it drove me crazy because there was literally nothing for that.
Yeah.
And so, and those litigators, no matter the size of the firm that they're at, are doing the exact same things: depositions, witness work, trial work. So our focus is litigators, and really top-notch litigators. We really target the big, well-known litigation firms and equally target smaller litigation boutiques. But basically, what I found was the people most responsive to what we've built are people who are passionate about litigation.
Yeah, right. And in terms of the price model, give us a sense of how much you're charging. Is it per seat per month, or is it a fixed fee arrangement?
It's a package model. So we have, I think, 6 packages ranging from up to 5 users to unlimited users. And we charge based on the packages. And part of the idea there is, if it's a small firm with 5 people, or it's 5 people at a big firm who want to try Allegory for the first time, we're charging them the same amount of money. And then, of course, as the bigger firm adds more people, they'll roll into the next package.
Yeah.
And that's unlimited cases, because obviously Allegory is built with the idea that we want people to put all their cases on there. There's a central dashboard where they can access all their cases in one place. And then we charge based on volume by case. So, after a certain volume, we start billing out by case based on the amount of data going in.
Yeah, yeah. And I've read a little bit about some success stories both on the Allegory website and also in Above the Law. Can you just talk us through maybe an example of where the tool has, really helped almost win a case?
Sure. So, trying to think of a couple examples. For example, it was used at a trial, and we got all the information in there, and it was a pretty fast-moving trial, lots of complicated facts, and the team, had all of the usual tons of boxes in the back of the courtroom, and usually what happens is a document comes up with a witness that you weren't expecting it to come up with, and everybody gets frantic and goes back to the back of the room, tries to pull it out of the boxes, tries to start looking it up. paralegal is trying to log into concordance, and they were able to just pull up the document immediately on an iPad. Of course, they were in a courtroom that didn't have Wi-Fi, but they could use an iPad, of course, so they could just pull up the document immediately. And they found the document and were able to see not only where it had been used, but what everybody had said about it at their deposition. And it wasn't a document that side had really done much with, but clearly the other side, when they pulled it up, they could see how the other side had been laying groundwork throughout the depositions, preparing to use it in this way, which was unexpected.
Yeah, great. And so it works offline and online as well, so you can use it without a Wi-Fi connection.
No, it is cloud-based, and you have to have an internet connection to use the app.
Yeah.
But because you don't need actual Wi-Fi, you can use, your 3G or 4G connection on your iPad, iPhone, and because it's optimized to work on mobile devices, you can pull it up and use it, anywhere that you can get a signal. And we also have ways of easily exporting the information out of the app. So I don't live in this world that I think some people live in, where they think lawyers are just going to start doing all of their work on iPads. I think people still very much like their paper. I still like my paper. So we made the information easily exported, 2 clicks, and you've got basically an electronic binder ready to be printed in hard copy, but it includes all of the information that is added in Allegory.
Yeah, great. And in terms of competitors, can you give us a sense of the competitive landscape? There's a number of tools out there servicing the litigation market. What's the landscape look like, the main players, and what's your pitch, I guess, to steal market share?
Sure. Well, there are really 3 categories of technologies that I see and worked with in the litigation field. The first is practice management tools. So, Amicus is one that a lot of small firms use. Clio is kind of the one that everybody knows about. And they really target firms of 20 or fewer users and do, some people refer to them as case management, but it's case management in terms of, kind of high level, not digging into the evidence. I would ask some of these vendors at trade shows when I was getting started, where would I put my produced documents? And they would say, well, you can create a folder here.
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense for a litigator dealing with tens of thousands of relevant documents. So they're really targeted at these smaller firms and do kind of admin features. So they also do billing, timekeeping, the kinds of things that big firms don't need a software program to handle, and we don't do any of those things.
Well, there does seem to be this distinction between practice management and case management. So you fall squarely in that bucket of, bespoke case management software. Is that how you'd put it?
We refer to ourselves as litigation management.
Litigation management, yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of the act of litigating. It's not all of the admin stuff that covers that. It's not even some of the stuff that people would traditionally think of as case management,
right?
Like conflicts checks and things like that. We really are the act of litigating built for the litigation team. So the other 2 categories I would say are e-discovery, which everyone is well familiar with. We're not trying to get into their space, but they are built for triage. And if you look at most of their websites, they say they're end-to-end, and that last bullet is production. Well, for me as the litigator, that's not the end. I've got a long way to go, and I have a long way to get there doing stuff that had nothing to do with all of those documents. The last category is case analysis tools. So that's Case Map, Case Notebook, and they do some of that post-production evidence stuff, but not kind of all the other things and tying it to how those documents are being used throughout the litigation. And those are typically the tools that when I talk to people about them, they say, I'd rather use Excel. And so most often when we talk about our tool, those are the tools that come to mind because there just isn't anything out there yet that does what we do. And the way I respond that's resonated with people who have seen both is, okay, well, you have a rotary phone, and I'm coming to you and saying I have a smartphone, and you're telling me, oh, no, it's okay, I already have a phone. And so we have to, coming up with that analogy really helped us get over that hurdle, and then people see it and they go, oh, now I get it.
Yeah, gotcha. So in terms of where you guys would fit, so a law firm or a litigation practice would have a stack, so to speak. They would have maybe some practice or case management software doing the general admin side, then they would have maybe an e-discovery specialized piece of software, and they would have Allegory that sits beside that as well. Is that sort of where you might fit in a law firm stack, so to speak?
It really depends on the firm. So in terms of e-discovery, if they have a big enough case that they are using an e-discovery tool, absolutely. You know, that information, we can pull those productions directly into Allegory once they have what I call the evidence stage, which is the produced stuff, the stuff that they're actually working with. But the firm would start working with our tool from the beginning. You know, on day one, add new case, they can immediately start working with documents, the complaint, the filings, all that stuff that they're working with before they even get to e-discovery. We do have smaller firms that are using both practice management tools and Allegory, because there's very little overlap there. So, for example, you know, using Clio alongside Allegory, but that's really the smaller firms where they need a practice management software to do other things like billing, timekeeping, and all of that. At a bigger firm, it would just be Allegory, and then with respect just to the discovery, you would have a feed-in from Relativity or whatever the tool is that they're using. Yeah,
and I guess it feeds into my next question, which is the legal tech sector and the startups. There's so many verticals within the legal vertical that are being tackled. So you've got specific litigation software that you're doing. There's transaction-specific software, due diligence-specific software. Could you ever envisage someone coming along and packaging this all together in one big piece of software? Could that happen, or is it too specialized?
I think it's too specialized. I think one of the reasons we're not out there trying to do e-discovery is because it's a completely different ballgame than trying to build a tool that works for the litigation team that's, you know, they can work with for what they're doing. You know, we're not doing predictive coding. We're not doing, you know, complex algorithmic searches. You know, there's a lot of stuff that e-discovery tools are doing that we don't want to do, and we're not specialists in, and we're not out there putting ourselves out as specialists. And so I think that to take everything and put it together, you run the risk of not being the best at one part of it. And so then some other startup is just going to come along and build a better program for that part of it, and people are going to, you know, it's kind of like what happens to companies. They all consolidate into one company, and then they start spinning off again into subsidiaries, or you have startups come and take just a little piece of the market. So I don't, you know, personally, I don't think it would be a great idea, and I don't think that the benefits would outweigh the dangers of trying to build one massive tool for everything. And the other part of that is, why would you, as a startup, want to try to tackle everything? Because then you have to sell the whole thing. You know, and they could like 3/4 of it, but if they love their e-discovery tool, and you have to sell them on your e-discovery tool to buy the whole thing, then you're sunk. I love being able to go in there, and I'm just like, I don't care what e-discovery tool you're using. I don't care what practice management tool you're using. I'm just trying to sell you Allegory for what you're doing, which is litigating.
And in terms of integrations, are you thinking about it yourself, or are you starting to see that? Like, if you look at startups running, you know, a MailChimp for their email marketing, which ties in nicely with Salesforce, and it ties in nicely with, you know, other bits and pieces, analytics. I'm not yet seeing as many, you know, plays nicely with in the legal tech startup scene, but certainly there seems to be scope for that. Is that something on your radar?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, at the same time, I don't think it's the best idea to go for all of it. I think there are integrations that make a lot of sense. So, for example, I know Clio recently announced that they partnered with Fastcase. I think that's great. I think that's to streamline a lot of things for lawyers at those firms. And I think that there are a lot of integrations that you can do. We're looking at opportunities to integrate with different companies, different softwares out there, you know. And then you see people who are building add-ons to existing, you know, technologies. So sort of reverse integration. So like Westlaw has been out there for years and years. Attorneys are already used to using it. rather than go try to replace Westlaw, for example, there's a law student at Berkeley who just emailed a bunch of us the other day about an add-on he's created that kind of just puts the features on top of Westlaw that everybody's been looking for. So, I think trying to find ways to integrate technologies that lawyers are already familiar with, or, kind of team up two or more startups and find ways to streamline the process, I think that's absolutely great.
Yeah, great. That was Best Law, was it? A Chrome extension or something like that?
Yes. Yeah, it was pretty cool. I looked at it. It said you could do one-click perfect Blue Book site, and I was like, oh my gosh, that would have saved me so many hours running to this other lawyer's office and begging her to check my Blue Book sites.
Yeah, cool. And there's a Chrome extension now. Has it made its way onto the Allegory Law product roadmap?
A Chrome extension for Westlaw into ours?
For you guys.
I mean, it's certainly something we would consider at some point. We'll definitely have to do some sort of integration with legal research.
Yeah.
It's a question that comes up a lot for us.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Well, I mean, we talked a little bit about some lessons learned earlier in, I guess, transitioning from law to technology and startups. Apart from that, do you have some other big hitting lessons that you've learned along the way?
Yeah, God, I kind of sometimes don't even know where to start. It has been the most tremendous learning experience of my life. I would say, learning, one of the hardest lessons I've learned, and I talked with someone about this earlier, is just learning to listen to people and learn that what people say isn't always the truth is one of them. In law, and this is specific especially to moving from law into having a startup and sales. You walk into these meetings and people say, absolutely, definitely, for sure, I'm going to use it. And it took a long time for me to realize, no, that probably means they're not going to use it. And I actually was talking with the guys the other day who were starting to go into the startup world. And it's like, yeah, it's going to be great. We're going to quit our job soon, and we're all lined up. We've talked with all these people, done tons of market research. They've all said they're going to use it. So we're all set. We've got our clients ready. And I looked at them and I was just like, oh, that's so cute. And, that's how I felt 2 years ago, a year ago. But it's been a big lesson to realize, there's a big step between people liking what you're doing and getting them to sign on the dotted line.
Yeah.
But that's just, one of a whole lot of lessons. Tech, learning what a data file is, how to make a zip file, these very basic things that for a non-techie, I feel proud of myself knowing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're talking about, they've got to sign on the dotted line, and then you've got to wait for payment as well. So it's like,
yeah. And law firms are notoriously not the best at paying. Although I have to say, my clients, I think, understand that we're just getting off the ground, and I have been tremendous about getting their checks out, which has been cool.
Cool. And just a final question, lots going on in legal tech, particularly over the last 18 months. Do you have any favorites that are really floating your boat right now?
Well, so I'm a big fan of Diligence Engine, and I know that you've previously spoken with Noah, one of the founders of that. Yeah. I have a lot of corporate lawyer friends, and when I started doing this, they all said, well, can you build something for us? Can you build something for us? And I said, eventually, but I have no idea what you guys do. And at reInvent Law in February, I saw them demo their technology, and I had never met Noah before. And I was like, whoa, I don't really know what my corporate friends do, and I don't understand corporate, but I understood exactly what he just did there. Wow. And how that could help them. I was very impressed by what they're doing. So I'd say that's definitely a favorite, sort of outside my world.
Oh, awesome. Well, look, thanks so much for your time, Alma. And sorry for the viewers that we had a little bit of internet connectivity troubles there. So the picture has been a little bit variable, but hopefully there was definitely a lot of good lessons there. And thanks again for your time today.
Thank you.
All right.